Hello, I'm Tom Hudson, Executive Director of the South Carolina School Improvement Council, and welcome to today's training, The Basics of Operating an SIC. This is the second in a series of 3 video training modules on the roles and responsibilities of school improvement councils. The series also includes the basics of organizing an SIC and basic SIC duties. These videos were created as a companion to the SESIC Handbook, This is Your SIC, a Handbook for Effectiveness. The handbook is available in English and Spanish and can be downloaded from our website. You can also request a printed copy from your SIC district contact. This training addresses several of the key building blocks that together create a strong foundation for school improvement councils: up-to-date bylaws, effective meetings, member recruitment and retention, and ongoing training and technical assistance. Adopting best practices in these areas will ultimately help your SIC to achieve results that improve student outcomes. Let's begin with bylaws, as they are the rules of the road when it comes to organizing and operating a school improvement council. Unless you are a new SIC at a new school, chances are your SIC adopted a set of bylaws at some point in time. It's not unusual, though, for SICs to lose track of their bylaws as members come and go. If your SIC is new or can't locate its bylaws, you have 2 options. The first, which we recommend, is to use the sample bylaws in the SESIC Bylaws Toolkit to create your own bylaws. This toolkit is on our website at sic.sc.gov. The language in the sample bylaws is based on state law and SIC best practices. Your SIC may choose to modify a sample bylaw language that isn't required by state law. The discussion guide that accompanies the sample bylaws will help you to identify what language can be changed. It also includes questions that will help your SIC discuss the pros and cons of alternative language. The sample bylaws with your SIC's changes, if any, will take effect as soon as your SIC votes to approve them. Now, the second option is to write a new set of bylaws from scratch. At a minimum, they should address all of the topics that are included in the sample bylaws. And if you write bylaws from scratch, SESIC must review them before they take effect to ensure that none of their provisions conflicts with state law. Once you have a set of bylaws in place, your SIC will need to update them in 2 circumstances. The first is when there's a change in state law that affects SICs. If this should occur, SESIC will update the sample bylaws online and notify all SICs of the change. The second is when your SIC decides to change the way it operates. It's a good idea to compare your practices with your bylaws periodically to make sure they still match. If they don't, your SIC must either change its practices or amend its bylaws. And finally, a couple of tips on how to keep track of your bylaws over time. First, make a note at the end of the bylaws of the date your SIC approved them, as well as the dates of any later amendments. That way you can always track and be sure which version is the most current. To keep your bylaws from walking out the door entirely, keep a copy in a central location, such as a physical file in the school office or a virtual file on the school's website. The humorist Dave Barry put it this way: if you had to identify, in one word, the reason why the human race hasn't reached its full potential, that word would be meetings. I was born at night, but it wasn't last night, so I know that sometimes when we attend meetings, they can be this way. But with school improvement councils, your meetings can always reach their full potential. The first meeting of an SIC, as it meets for the first time in the year, there are several important tasks that your SIC should accomplish during that meeting. After welcoming and introducing new members at the start of the year, the first order of business should be the election of officers, chair or co-chairs, the vice chair, and the secretary, and any additional officers called for in your bylaws. Remember, an SIC doesn't have a treasurer because it doesn't handle funds directly or maintain a bank account of its own name. Each officer's specific duties should be spelled out thoroughly in the bylaws. In terms of eligibility to hold office, any elected or appointed SIC member is eligible to be an officer, except as otherwise provided in your local bylaws. The principal may not hold an SIC office, and the eligibility of other ex officio members will be determined by your SIC in its bylaws. Another task that should be completed at the first meeting is setting a regular meeting schedule for the school year. We strongly recommend that an SIC meet at least 8 times per year. This allows SICs to take a month off, which SICs usually take in the busy months of either December or June. If your SIC wants to encourage all members to attend meetings regularly, be sure to consider all members' schedules. If there are conflicts, consider alternating between days or between early and morning and evening times. Keep in mind that working parents and community members are likely to have difficulty attending SIC meetings if they are scheduled for the mid-afternoon every month. The first meeting of the year is also a good time to provide members with copies of key SIC documents. These should include, at minimum, the SIC handbook, your SIC's current bylaws, and the school's most recent school improvement plan, which your school may refer to as the renewal plan. More districts and schools are beginning to post their improvement plans on their websites. If you can't find your school's plan online, ask your principal to provide you with a copy. While SIC chairs can't do it alone, they carry a significant amount of responsibility for seeing that SIC meetings are efficient and productive. We've listed several practices here that could help SIC chairs plan and guide successful meetings. First, while the SIC chair should consult with the principal about the agenda, it's ultimately the chair's responsibility to see that an agenda is prepared and distributed before each meeting. You can find a sample SIC agenda in the Toolkit for Effective Meetings on our website. As the sample agenda illustrates, we recommend that the chair note the approximate amount of time allocated for each agenda item. Usually, SICs allow a total of an hour to an hour and a half for a regular meeting. During meetings, the chair should take the lead in making sure that everyone has a chance to contribute to discussions, and they should actively encourage those who are quiet by nature to participate. Sticking to the items on the agenda will help make your meetings run more smoothly. While members should each try to keep their own comments on point, it's ultimately up to the chair to corral the discussion when it wanders off topic for too long. And before adjourning, the chair should make sure that everyone knows who's responsible for any tasks that need to be completed before the next meeting. If this isn't done, one of two things is likely to happen. Either the SIC will continue to discuss the same issues every month without making any progress toward results, or one member, usually the chair, will end up doing all of the work. Neither of these is a desirable outcome. And finally, always try to start and end on time. This is simply a common courtesy that shows respect for members' time. This slide is especially relevant to all of our SIC secretaries. The main thing to know about meeting minutes is that they need not be a word-for-word transcript of the meeting. They're called minutes and not hours for a reason. The primary functions of SIC minutes are to record attendance, to briefly describe how each item on the agenda was addressed, and to document the results of votes or other official action taken during the meeting. New secretaries may want to review the sample minutes in the Toolkit for Effective Meetings for assistance in preparing their draft minutes. Once the draft minutes are completed, it's important that secretaries make every effort to distribute them to members well ahead of the next meeting. Members don't have a chance to review the draft in advance, they will have to use valuable time during the meeting to do so. Members should vote and to approve the prior month's minutes with corrections, if any, at the next regular SIC meeting. So what's the role of an SIC member in making meetings as effective as possible? Well, like the chair, SIC members need to do some advanced preparation. This includes reviewing the agenda, draft minutes, and any other relevant materials for the meeting. It's also important that members make every effort to complete tasks assigned to them in preparation for the next meeting. Your SIC will only be as productive as each of its individual members allows. And finally, All members can assist the chair in implementing practices such as keeping discussions on point, encouraging all to participate, and starting and ending meetings on time. Creating one or more SIC committees can help keep meetings from getting bogged down in details and logistics. There are essentially two types of committees. An ad hoc committee is temporary and is usually formed to work on a specific SIC goal. A standing committee is considered permanent and is usually focused on ongoing SIC work such as publicity, advocacy, or member recruitment. Unless the bylaws state otherwise, the chair has the authority to appoint the members of both types of committees. It's good practice to have at least one SIC member on every committee, but a committee member need not necessarily be a member of the SIC. If, for example, an SIC forms a committee to address student health goals, the chair might want to appoint a non-member who has special expertise in this area, like a pediatrician or a nutritionist. Committees should report out regularly to the full School Improvement Council. And when decisions need to be made, a committee should present its recommendations to the full SIC and allow it to make the final call. Before we conclude this section on effective meetings, I want to take a moment to explain how the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act, or South Carolina's FOIA, as this law is often called, applies to school improvement councils. Like a school board or town council meeting, SIC meetings must be open to the public. An SIC can prepare for unexpected visitors by including a time on the agenda for public comment every month. It can set time limits on public comments, but should be sure to apply those limits consistently. If no members of the public are present, the chair can note that fact for the record and move on to the next order of business. The public notice requirements in South Carolina's FOIA likewise applies to SICs. An SIC must post its agenda for a regular meeting at least 24 hours in advance in two locations. First, on a bulletin board at a publicly accessible location at the school, such as the entrance to the main office, and secondly, on the school's website. An SIC must also post its regular meeting schedule for the full school year, including the dates, times, and locations of all meetings. At a minimum, the schedule must be posted at the school's main office. We recommend that SICs post their schedules on their school website as well. South Carolina's FOIA considers SIC documents such as agendas, meeting minutes, bylaws, and election results, all to be public records that must be maintained and made available for inspection and copying by the public upon request. We recommend that SICs archive copies of all important documents in a central location in the main school office or on the school's website so that they will be readily accessible when needed. So that concludes the section on effective SIC meetings. You're going to find more information and examples in the SIC Handbook, our toolkit for effective SIC meetings on our website at sic.sc.gov. Let's turn to the next building block for an effective SIC, member recruitment and retention. In order to sustain success, an SIC must learn how to find and keep committed members from year to year. For some schools, the most difficult part of convening an SIC is finding individuals who are willing to serve. If your SIC is having this problem, here are a few tips that can help. First, it's important to know that recruiting SIC members is a year-round job. If you wait until just a few days before nominations are to start, you run the risk of not finding as many candidates as you need to fill the vacancies on your SIC. It will help if you assign responsibility for leading member recruitment efforts to a committee or one or two individual SIC members. At a minimum, these leaders should regularly ask other members, teachers, staff, school leaders, neighbors, and friends for the names of individuals who might be willing to serve. The SIC can then invite these individuals to attend a meeting and encourage them to run the next election. It can be especially difficult to recruit parent representatives in the middle and high school grades. If your SIC is in this situation, try to build relationships with the SICs at your feeder schools. One way to do this is to partner with these SICs on activities that will help their families make the transition to your school. Hopefully, some of the parents that you meet through these activities will be interested in joining your SIC when their children start attending your school. Generating positive publicity for your SIC is another effective member recruitment strategy, as well as a way to build your SIC's reputation and influence. Some ways to do this include regularly contributing content to your school and district newsletters, working with your district's public information officer to keep local media outlets informed about your SIC's work, maintaining a regular SIC presence on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sites, setting up an SIC information table at school and community events, or even requesting a dedicated SIC page on your school's website and updating it regularly. Some SICs have no problem finding folks who want to serve. They may have 15 or 20 people at their first meeting, but as the year progresses, these numbers can decline. By May, only a few members might be left. The lesson here is that the work doesn't end as soon as you have enough names on the roster to comply with state law and your bylaws. It's critical that your SIC adopt practices that continue to motivate members throughout the year. We've already talked about one important practice, holding effective meetings. Members will likely start dropping out if they don't think SIC meetings are a good use of their time. Another way to keep your SIC members engaged is to make sure that everyone has something meaningful to do. There are many different ways that members can contribute to their SIC. The key is to learn about your members' unique knowledge, skills, and interests, and match them with tasks that forward your SIC's work. Be sure to ask your members for feedback periodically. Don't just assume that everyone is satisfied with how the SIC is doing. Ask, listen, and respond. When a member misses a meeting without any word, don't wait until one or two more meetings go by before checking in on them. Either the chair or a designee should reach out to the absent member by phone or email before the next meeting. This lets the member know that their presence was missed, and if there's a problem related to the SIC, you have a chance to address it before you lose that member. Another practice that sounds obvious but often gets overlooked is giving members public recognition and saying thank you often. Don't assume that members, all of whom are volunteers, know how much their efforts are appreciated. Show them by words and actions, and show them regularly. The chair and the principal should take the lead on this. And finally, SICs must not lose sight of their ultimate goal, achieving results that improve student achievement. Helping members keep their eyes on that prize will help them stay motivated and active. The fourth and final SIC building block we'll address in this session is ongoing training and technical assistance. All members bring valuable types of knowledge and skills to their SIC, but they may not necessarily be up on the areas of organizational management, strategic planning, or educational policy. Building member capacities in these areas will help your SIC to function more effectively. A central part of our mission at SCSIC is to provide this type of specialized training and technical assistance. These services are available to your SICs year-round, and they're free of charge. Our offerings include additional online training modules. This training is one in a series of 3 videos that together cover the material contained in the SIC handbook. Our offerings also include district-wide and in-person trainings. In addition to the basics and other topics listed here, district-wide trainings include tips for SIC chairs, crafting the SIC report to the parents, applying for the Riley Award for SIC Excellence, and the SIC's role in Read to Succeed. To request one of these trainings for your district, just call or email your SIC district contact, or contact our office, and we'll work with you and your district to get it scheduled. Our staff also travels to individual schools across the state to provide training and technical assistance. We facilitate 2 types of interactive workshops for individual SICs. A goal-setting workshop that assists SICs in reviewing data, identifying school needs, and setting goals. And a family engagement inventory that helps SICs identify all of their school's existing engagement activities and plan ways to improve and expand on them. Our staff can also develop customized trainings and technical assistance for individual SICs based on their specific needs. You can contact our office directly to schedule these types of services, and we'll be happy to help. So this concludes this training on the basics of operating an SIC. But before we close, I'd like to share with you a list of some of our core services. In addition to training and technical assistance, our office also provides the SC-SIC website at sic.sc.gov. Here you'll find free downloadable materials, information, and links. Our electronic newsletter, Council News, and periodic email updates in the loop for all SIC members and friends on SIC-related topics. And our very active Facebook and Twitter sites. Thank you very much for joining me for this training. Be sure to check out the other videos in this series, the basics of organizing an SIC and basic SIC duties. And be sure to keep an eye out for information about our statewide SIC annual meeting and Riley Award celebration handled in March of every year. I also want to take this opportunity to encourage all of our SICs. Share your success stories with us. We'll publicize your work and use your stories to teach and inspire other school improvement councils. And finally, thank you for donating your time and talents to support quality public education in South Carolina. Again, this is Tom Hudson, and we'll see you next time.